Order. Question to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Peter Swallow.
Question 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'd like to take questions 1 and 6 together. Our vision for the next generation of new towns is setting the stage for a house-building revolution in the years to come. These will be well-connected and attractive places with all the infrastructure and services needed to sustain thriving communities, including public transport, GP surgeries and schools.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bracknell was designated as a new town 76 years ago in the aftermath of World War II, and it's been a huge success, in part because of the way it was designed, with leisure facilities, access to nature and transport links built into the town's DNA. So as the government looks to build the next generation of new towns, will my right honourable friend commit to learning from the new towns that went before?
Well, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, Mr. Speaker, and there's lots to admire in the past, including the new towns like Bracknell. We're learning the lessons from the past to ensure that our next generation of new towns are well-connected, well-designed and sustainable and attractive places where people want to live. And it's important, Mr. Speaker, that they have the infrastructure and the amenities and the services they need to thrive.
Ben Goldsborough.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The housing crisis is not just an issue located in our inner city centres, it's also something in our rural communities as well. One thing that would be excellent for our area of South Norfolk would be a new town to help tackle our housing crisis we have locally and to ensure that we can deliver affordable housing for local people where they need it.
Well, I agree with my honourable friend that actually the housing crisis is a challenge across the whole of England. The Independent New Towns Task Force are reviewing submissions to the call for evidence as they continue their work on recommending locations for potential new towns. And the responses to the call for evidence will support the task force work developing its recommendation and demonstrates the significant enthusiasm across the country, Mr. Speaker.
Francois.
Thank you, sir. Our local paper, The Echo, revealed last week that Labour-led Southend Council and Lib Dem-led Rochford Council are now planning to build a new town of up to 10,000 houses on the border between the two. But I understand as this is done under the New Towns Fund, those numbers would be in addition to Rochford's housing target rather than part of it. So we'd be talking nearly 20,000 properties by 2043, which is totally unsustainable given our creaking infrastructure as it is. So can the Secretary of State confirm, would those new town houses on the Rochford side be part of the target or in addition to it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we haven't selected the positions for the new towns. The new towns task force is still working on it. We've been clear that the new towns will deliver over and above the targets produced by the standard method. But this isn't one of those new towns because we haven't done them yet, Mr. Speaker.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The new town of Sherwood, which is being built already in my constituency, will see up to 5,500 new homes over the coming years. However, as well as challenges around First Port and the delayed delivery of a supermarket and other vital local amenities, there are delays and escalating costs with the delivery of a new GP surgery and also the moving of some national grid pylons to make way for further new homes at an enormous cost to the taxpayer. What conversations is the Secretary of State having with key providers of national infrastructure like the NHS and National Grid to ensure that such obstacles are removed and these homes can be built?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're bringing forward planning and infrastructure bill, as the honourable member knows. We said we set these mandatory targets. We do believe, unlike the previous government, that infrastructure has to come as part of that. We're working across government to make sure that that's completed. We're already pushing further on Section 106 notices as part of developers. We're telling them, Mr. Speaker, we want the houses, we need the infrastructure, and we want to make sure they do it properly.
Cameron Thomas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Question 2, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'll take questions 2 and 10 together. The Government is committed to ensuring that the 1.5 million new homes that we will build in this Parliament will be high quality, well designed and sustainable. We intend to amend building regulations later this year as part of the introduction of future standards that will set more ambitious energy efficiency and carbon emissions requirements for new homes.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response. Whilst visiting the Netherlands with the Environmental Audit Committee, I saw the benefits of long-term, joined-up strategic planning. In Rotterdam city centre, rooftop gardens provide mental health benefits and allotment space, whilst on the ground level, sunken community spaces and underground car parks mitigate flooding. The Tewkesbury Garden Town will bring 4,000 new homes to my constituency. Will the Minister meet with me and stakeholders to support this garden town so that we can set the standard for development across the country?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The approach of the Netherlands, not least in terms of spatial planning and design standards, has much to commend to it, but we need a standalone debate to do that justice, Mr. Speaker. With regard to the Tewkesbury garden communities, they are precisely the kind of sustainable and infrastructure-led development which this government wants to see more of, that we're backing through legislation and policy. And I'd be more than happy to meet with the honourable member and local stakeholders to discuss what more might be done to deliver on the aspirations set out in the Tewkesbury Garden Communities Charter, which I believe was published last year.
Michelle Welsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited the Howgate Close housing development in Eakring in my constituency, and I am proud to say they are the most energy efficient homes in the country. It would be easy to assume that houses like these cost a fortune, yet what is remarkable about this development is they are affordable, including for some of the most vulnerable in our society. Would the Minister agree with me that it is vitally important that energy-efficient homes are affordable and accessible to everyone? And will he come to visit Eakring with me to see this incredible development?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. It may not surprise you, Mr. Speaker, but I am indeed aware of the 9 high thermal mass buildings that have been constructed for rent at Howgate Close, and I commend the site owner, Dr. Parsons, for championing such high-quality sustainable development on his land. We do need to ensure that all new homes are future-proof with low-carbon heating and very high-quality building fabric, including those made available for rent for local people at affordable rents. I will ensure my honourable friend's request for ministers to visit Howgate Close is given due consideration.
Sir Julian.
May I genuinely thank the Minister for the time he took to meet with me and the chairman of a local residents association in an apartment block to discuss the problems of building new homes on top of existing apartment blocks if the work is done badly. Can he say whether he has drawn any conclusions from that meeting as to how safeguards could be put in place against unsuitable and unsustainable developments of that sort?
Minister.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. We did have a very productive discussion about the issue that he highlights. He, I think, acknowledges some of the bad outcomes that we've seen as a result of the previous government's expansion of permitted development rights since 2013. We are keeping the matter under review. I'm more than happy to have a further conversation with him as we further consider policy in this area.
Eleanor Dollingall.
Mr. Speaker, as we build new homes, it's also important that we make sure our existing homes are as safe as they can possibly be. I recently met with a leading fire safety business in my constituency who told me of the unacceptably long delays they are facing with the building safety regulator. So would the Minister meet with me and my local business to discuss the delays at the building safety regulator and how we can tackle this?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. She raises an important issue, Mr. Speaker. The newly established building safety regulator is crucial to upholding building safety standards, but I acknowledge its operation is causing delays in handling applications for some building projects. She will be aware that in February the government allocated £2 million of funding to the BSR to accelerate the processing of applications. We're working closely with the regulator to support their plan for improved delivery and will continue to keep its performance under review.
Shadow Minister Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government's much lauded policy to build 1.5 million new and sustainable homes has been doomed from the start of this Parliament. But now we have it confirmed, with the Chancellor last week saying that only 1.3 million homes will be delivered by the end of this Parliament. But it's worse than that. If we take England, OBR figures show that only 1.06 million homes will be built, 500,000 fewer than their target, but also around 200,000 fewer than the last Conservative government built in the last 5 years. So will the Minister now confirm the goalposts have changed, haven't they, and that Labour will not meet its own target for housing in this country?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very fond of the honourable gentleman, but characteristically, I'm afraid he's got this one completely wrong. The 1.3... If the right honourable gentleman will give me time to answer. The OBR, Mr. Speaker, estimated that our changes to the National Planning Policy Framework alone will lead to an increase in house building to 1.3. That doesn't take into account the planning and infrastructure bill and the other changes coming forward. He's simply wrong. We are on course for 1.5 million homes in this Parliament.
Question number 3, Mr Speaker.
So state.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I'll take questions 3 and 15 together. Our country is in the midst of a housing crisis, decades in the making. As our plan for change set out, this government is committed to the biggest increase in social and affordable housing in a generation. We've already taken decisive action to increase the supply of new homes, with bold reforms to the planning system and launching the New Homes Accelerated, which will unblock thousands of homes stuck in the planning system. And at the spring statement, Mr Speaker, we announced £2 billion down payment to deliver up to 18,000 new social and affordable homes, and we are investing £600 million in training for new construction jobs.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Demand for housing is greatest in London, which is where the economy most needs new homes. Building in London means less pressure on commuting infrastructure and on house prices in places like rural Kent. But the housing targets for London have been cut. And the government justifies this by saying London has, quote, the biggest proposed percentage increase against delivery. Why is the Right Honourable Lady rewarding the London Mayor's failure to build Britain's most needed houses with lower targets?
Well, Mr Speaker, we're asking London to deliver a record levels of house building. Our revised shared standard method sets a housing need for London of nearly 88,000 homes per year. The previous government artificially boosted targets for London using an extra 35% urban uplift. This resulted in a target of nearly 100,000 homes, Mr Speaker, a third of the previous national target, and it could not be justified. The London Mayor has started to more new council home starts than any time since the 1970s. He's getting on building the homes while the Tories have failed and are the blockers.
Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With around 1.3 million people on housing registers in England, it's vitally important that we achieve a step change in the supply of housing, and particularly social housing, over this Parliament. However, in my constituency and across the North West, housing associations are managing many ageing, low-quality homes that require ongoing investment and maintenance. Homes for the North warns that many of these properties will become uninhabitable and unsuitable for social housing over the next decade. What consideration has my right honourable friend given to targeting renewal of social housing, such as through pooling funding alongside money for decarbonisation, so RSLs can use it to flexibly combine retrofit, demolition and new build, driving regeneration and reducing carbon emissions?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the absolute mess the previous government left our housing stock in. We'll ensure the biggest increase in social house building in a generation, alongside safe, warm and decent homes, by introducing minimum energy efficiency standard and reviewing the Decent Home Standard. Mr Speaker, with recent funding includes £1.29 billion for warm homes, social housing fund, £800 million in top-ups to the current affordable homes programme, and £2 billion down payment on the future programme, which will be used for regeneration projects where there is a net increase in the number of homes.
Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Of course, the housing numbers for London were cut by 20% by the government, but again and again and again in Hansard we heard from the Secretary of State the assertion that 1.5 million homes would be built in this Parliament in England. So why did the Chancellor tell us a few days ago that there would only be 1.3 million across the whole of the UK? And could she please confirm today that the 1.5 million target has gone?
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't know if my Mancunian accent will help, as opposed to the Minister who answered this question just a moment ago. The OBR scored what the National Planning Policy Framework changes we've already made. That's where that figure came from. Our other plans, including the Homes Acceleration Plan and the money that we're investing since then, Mr Speaker, and the planning infrastructure bill changes will mean that that number will increase and we will meet our 1.5 million homes target. I don't think I can say it much clearer than that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the housing is a real crisis in Hackney, where we're spending £54 million on temporary accommodation, and I visit families in tragically overcrowded accommodation, most of them working families. We need this social housing as quickly as possible. I know she's putting her shoulder to the wheel. Would she come and visit Hackney and see the work that the council's been doing in building properly affordable social rented council housing, and it could do so much more with more government support?
Yeah.
State.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. Mr. Speaker, we have over 160,000 children in temporary accommodation. I've said this at the dispatch box a couple of times. It's a scandal we're in this situation. That's why the government has been making the changes we've made. We make no apology for changing the mandatory housing targets and to get Britain building again, because we need those homes. Those kids deserve better, and we need to cut also the amount of temporary accommodation, B&B use that children are living in at the moment, and we're determined to do that.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you. Oh, no, it's not me, Mr. Speaker, sorry.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll take question 4 and 7 together. This government has increased funding for homelessness services by £233 million to a total of nearly £1 billion for 2025-26. The government has also provided additional funding of £60 million of emergency winter pressures funding to support people sleeping rough during the colder months.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to media reports, Conservative shadow ministers met with representatives from the property group Get Living. Get Living manage thousands of properties in my constituency. In their meeting, they discussed how to stop the Renters' Rights Bill, in their words, dead in its tracks. After years of promising to ban no-fault evictions, the Tory government failed to deliver. Now they're colluding with the property industry to keep them in place. Will this Labour government do the right thing and ban no-fault evictions for good?
Minister.
The government remains committed to abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions for both new and existing tenancies as soon as possible, and we will ensure the sector has adequate notice of the system taking effect and work closely with stakeholders to enable a smooth transition.
Lee Pitcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently took part in an organised sleep-out event at Doncaster Eco Power Stadium set up by Club Doncaster Foundation to raise money for projects supporting homeless people. Fundraisers like this and the work done by charities like Shelter and Doncaster People's Focus Group are absolutely vital, but ultimately it's up to the government to solve the problem of homelessness. Can the Minister update us on what the government is doing to fulfil the need for social housing?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Since taking office, we've made £800 million of new funding available to deliver 7,800 new social and affordable homes, and from 2026-27 we're injecting £2 billion to build up to 18,000 more homes by the end of this Parliament. We will announce additional funding for next year and beyond at the spending review.
Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cornwall faces a homelessness crisis with 22,000 families on the housing wait list. Following a meeting last week with the Minister of State for Housing, I've now proposed an Airbnb bill. This bill would require second homeowners to formally seek planning permission for any change of use on their properties. There's currently an easy loophole for property owners to avoid paying council tax altogether by passing the home off as a short-term holiday let. So will the Minister please confirm he'll give this proposal due consideration and visit Cornwall to discuss it further?
Is this homelessness?
I thank the honourable member for his question. He raises important points. Our priority is making sure we tackle the root causes of the housing shortage and homelessness. That's why we are building £1.5 million. We are investing record amounts in tackling the need for additional investment in housing and homelessness. As I said, £1 billion for the next year. And I look.
Bob Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the Homelessness Reduction Act was passed in 2017, 1.4 million people have been prevented from becoming homeless by local authorities and the action taken. However, there's clearly evidence still of local authorities refusing to plan for people to prevent them from becoming homeless. So will the Minister take up the private member's bill that I championed the other week and was given an unopposed second reading to ensure we put the pressure on the people that should provide the housing so no one in this country is forced to sleep rough?
Minister.
The honourable member has done a great deal of work across party in opposition on supported housing, and we have a consultation in place. I'm pleased to say that I have met with him on a couple of occasions. He will be aware we're working hard at pace to tackle the underlying challenges facing people. 164,000 children in temporary accommodation. Rough sleeping has gone up by 164% since 2010. We are determined to take action to deal with those challenges, but that will require concerted work, and the Deputy Prime Minister is leading the interdepartmental task force on homelessness, and I look forward to continuing to work with him.
Shadow Minister Paul Holmes.
Mr. Speaker, quite rightly, the government said it wanted to reduce homelessness and rough sleeping in its manifesto. But instead, there has been a 20% increase in rough sleeping, highest in London, but rapidly climbing in other parts of England, for example, 67% in Derbyshire. With Homeless Link saying that the last budget removed £50 to £60 million from the sector due to national insurance increases and calling for a reset on homelessness funding, will the Minister outline where her long-term plan for reducing homelessness is and commit to seeing a fall in the next year?
Minister.
The Minister should be aware of the record of his government. A record increase in rough sleeping. Since 2010, it went up by 164%. The last Labour government cut it by 2/3. We have put in an additional 233 million, taking the total to £1 billion. We have provided additional funding in 60 million to tackle winter pressures. He should look at the record of his government and ensure that he faces up to the fact that his party over 14 years presided over record increases, and we are determined to tackle it, and that's what we're doing through our cross-cutting work across government and through...
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
This one definitely is me, Mr. Speaker. The government is taking concerted steps to drive a transformational and lasting change in the safety and quality of social housing, including introducing Awab's law and consulting on the new Decent Home Standard and minimum energy efficiency standards. The majority of social housing tenants already have security of tenure, and our Renters' Rights Bill will abolish Section 21 evictions where these are used by housing associations.
Jessica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been working with 3 groups of residents in buildings all run by the same social housing provider in my constituency, Bournemouth West. Many have come to me left living in horrendous conditions with leaking roofs, damp and mould, and unfinished and unremediated works. Now, following my intervention, the housing provider has agreed to a multi-million pound upgrade in one of the buildings to hire extra staff and to communicate better with residents. This is great news, but it shouldn't have to get to this point. So what more can be done to ensure that residents like mine aren't left waiting years for repairs and that social housing providers are meeting their obligations?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I very much agree with her. Her intervention should not have been required to force the provider in question to take action. In addition to the forthcoming reforms I referred to in my previous answer, she will know that all registered providers of social housing are required to deliver the outcomes of the regulatory standards set by the independent regulator of social housing. The regulator works intensively with providers who are not delivering those outcomes and has a series of powers at its disposal when it identifies serious failings. I'm more than happy to discuss further with her how she might seek redress for her residents.
So Desmond Swain.
My interests are in the register, Mr. Speaker. In what precise ways is he intending to improve the Decent Homes Standard?
Minister.
We've been very clear, Mr. Speaker. We're going to consult on a new Decent Home Standard that applies both to the social rented and private rented sector, and I welcome the honourable member's engagement when that consultation is published.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite the announcements referred to earlier, Building Safety Regulator is now advising applicants to plan for 16 weeks to clear Gateway 2, holding up a disproportionate number of social homes, including, for example, 100 in the constituency of my right honourable friend for Kingston and Surbiton, and much longer than is required for planning permission. What steps will the government be taking to reduce the wait back down to 8 weeks, as it was?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and he rightly, as my honourable friend did, raises a really important issue. As I've said, Mr Speaker, the newly established building safety regulator is crucial to upholding building safety standards, but we acknowledge it is causing delays in handling applications, particularly for high-rise building projects on Gateway 2, but there's also Gateway 3 after that. The funding that we've announced will make a difference, but as I've said, we're working closely with the regulator to support their plan for improved delivery, including increasing caseworker capacity and guidance to the sector, and as I said, we'll continue to keep its performance under close review.
Robbie Moore.
Number 8, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With your permission, I'll take questions 8 and 18 together. Local plans are the best way for communities to shape decisions about how to deliver the housing and wider development that their areas need. We want more people to be involved in the development of those local plans, and a key objective of our digital planning reforms is increased public engagement with them. Measures in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill will ensure planning committees play their proper role in scrutinising development without obstructing it, while maximising the use of experienced professional planners.
Mr Speaker, across my constituency, local people are hugely frustrated at Labour-run Bradford Council inundating our communities with hundreds of new houses whilst not investing in local services and roads. Despite protests and valid concerns, they have steamrolled through development at every stage. Yet when local people in Silsden, in vast numbers, did support the development of a new farm shop literally just on the periphery of the town, which is exactly the new kind of services that would promote local growth and deliver the new housing sustainable needs, Bradford Council blocked it. So how will the Minister ensure that local councils do listen to local people and are not dictating development plans to them?
Minister.
Well, I appreciate why the Honourable Gentleman needs to make the political point to get his clip, but what I'd say is I'm glad that we've got Labour councils across the country who back development. Of course residents should have their say, but it is the role and responsibility of local authorities to make decisions on material considerations when it comes to planning applications, and I've got no reason to think the local authority in question has done anything other than that.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When I was leader of South Gloucestershire Council in partnership with Labour, we restored the right of local people to speak at planning committee site visits, giving people back their voice in the community affected. However, clause 46 of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill enables the Secretary of State to bypass planning committees altogether. If the Minister truly wants to get Britain building, will he think again and give communities a real stake in local planning decisions?
Mr Speaker, as I've made clear, we want more people involved in the development of local plans. There's nothing in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill that will prevent them from objecting to individual applications. The measures simply ensure that the process of determining applications at a local level is more streamlined and efficient. As I made clear in closing the second reading debate on the bill on the 24th of March, the Government intend to formally consult on proposals relating to the delegation of planning decisions in England, so the Honourable Lady and other Honourable members will be able to engage with the detail alongside the bill's passage.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Those needing a social home in Luton have gone up from 8.5 thousand last year to 11,500 this year. So, of course, welcome the Government's plan for 1.5 million homes. But while we are crying out for houses in Luton, just over the border, on our border in Central Beds, developments are taking place, but without people in Luton getting a look in. What can the Minister do to ensure that local authorities actually cooperate with each other to deliver the homes we need?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. We are taking measures to address precisely the problem that she outlines. Proposals in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill will see spatial development strategies become mandatory at a sub-regional level, so local authorities that neighbour each other have to effectively cooperate on housing delivery and infrastructure provision across boundaries, just in the way she says, and it will address the challenges she outlines.
Down.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Dunfermline is Scotland's newest city, and as such we have a large number of homes being built all the time. However, too often these large-scale housing developments are done without reference to local services such as GPs and without proper consultation with local people, partly due to failures in the Scottish Government SNP planning policy. What advice does the Minister have for how these issues might be overcome, and will he engage with the Scottish Government to make sure they are learning any lessons from the excellent changes being made in this part of the UK?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Housing is a devolved matter, but I am always keen, Mr Speaker, to convey to colleagues in the Scottish Government precisely the benefits of the proposals we're taking forward when it comes to planning reform and a renewed drive for house building.
Lee Barham.
Question 9, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Local authorities in England must ensure supports available in safe accommodation for domestic abuse victims who need it. My department has allocated £160 million for 2025-26, a £30 million uplift from the previous year, and this funding is for local authorities to commission life-saving support for victims in safe accommodation.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. One of my constituents is a victim of domestic abuse and on a 999 priority list. She was served a Section 21 notice by her landlord but was denied property Band-A housing by the council. This was because she signed a police protection order stating she was not at risk of domestic violence in order to keep custody of her children. This forced her to choose between her children and a safe home. What is my right honourable friend doing to ensure councils properly prioritise domestic abuse victims so that no one faces such an impossible choice?
Minister.
I'm so sorry to hear about the difficulties that my honourable friend's constituent Lucy has faced. This is horrific, and he will be aware the government is focused on tackling violence against women, working across department, led by the Home Secretary and the Deputy Prime Minister. Local authorities are strongly encouraged through statutory guidance to give priority for social housing to victims of domestic abuse and their families, particularly if they are homeless and require urgent rehousing. And we are also taking action to exempt victims of domestic abuse from local connections tests where these apply to ensure there are no barriers to victims accessing social housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the weekend, I dealt with a case where a homeless pregnant woman, victim of domestic abuse, was kicked out of her temporary accommodation by Kirklees Council with no real reason to do so, and she was left on the street. Will the Minister explain or share with this House what steps will be taken to prevent councils from turfing out pregnant women who are victims of domestic abuse onto the streets?
Minister.
I'd be grateful if the honourable member could write to me about the specific case, and I will follow up with him.
Marcia Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited the Glassdoor's night shelter in my constituency to hear more about the work they are doing to alleviate homelessness. And one of the things they told me is many of the women that visit the shelter are fleeing domestic abuse. And we all know the challenges if you are homeless. It's almost impossible to get a job, let alone finding somewhere safe and decent to live. So the Minister has highlighted the investment. So can she just set out a little bit more about the money that is going into investing in services to not only support but to protect women that are fleeing domestic abuse?
Minister.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. She will be aware the Deputy Prime Minister is chairing an interdepartmental task force on homelessness and rough sleeping, and a key part of our work is ensuring that we support victims of domestic abuse and violence. And as I stated, we have already allocated funding to local authorities, and we will continue to work across government to tackle the root causes of homelessness as well as violence against women.
Franklin.
Speaker. Victims of domestic violence urgently need safe, stable accommodation. However, currently councils have no obligation to offer like-for-like housing. Too often the duty is discharged by suggesting private rentals which are frequently unaffordable or unsuitable for those on low incomes. This creates a significant barrier for many victims and even places in a situation where they choose not to leave because they can't have the housing that they need. Can the Minister further explain how she is taking steps to ensure victims offer genuinely safe, appropriate, affordable housing, and whether she'll consider strengthening the statutory duty on councils to better support those fleeing domestic abuse? Thank you.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her question. She'll be aware that there is a massive housing shortage. There are challenges around supported housing. We need to make sure, as we are doing, that the victims of domestic violence get the support they need, which is why we provided the additional uplift of 30 million, totalling to 160 million. And we are working across government to tackle the root causes of violence against women, within which economic support, housing support is crucial, and I look forward to working with her and others on this very important agenda.
Alison Bennett.
Question 11, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We all want to see our town centres thriving. Through our plan for neighbourhoods, the Government is investing £1.5 billion in the future of towns and communities. The Government is also committed to strengthening the developer contribution system to ensure that new developments provide necessary infrastructure. And to address vacancy in town centres, we've given Council powers to force the auction of empty shops.
Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I'd like to refer the House to my register of interests. Burgess Hill is fast growing, and the Lib Dem run council is working hard with Homes England to deliver 3,500 new homes, hundreds of which are affordable. But after years of Conservative failure, my constituents are worried housing growth will go hand in hand with the hollowing out of the town centre. My Lib Dem colleagues want to deliver a buoyant town centre through a public-private partnership. So will the Minister visit Burgess Hill himself to see the innovative approaches we are taking to make Burgess Hill thrive again?
Minister.
I'm grateful for that question and for the spirit in which Burgess Hill is taking on the need to build housing in their community. We believe that sustainable housing with complementary infrastructure will drive the local economy, will drive footfall to town centres and will help bring private investment to high streets. Clearly something interesting is happening in Burgess Hill and I'd very much like to visit.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Sandwell, we have almost 20,000 people on the housing waiting list. We desperately need more affordable and social homes. We also have a town centre in West Brom, which is busy during the day, but very quiet at night with no night economy whatsoever. Both of those could be addressed by development of residential properties in the town centre. We have a few places earmarked for development, but they've completely stalled. So can the Minister say what more they could do to help West Brom get building and build the homes people need?
Minister. I'm grateful for that question. The Honourable Lady is exactly right, that those two challenges can be taken on together. Putting opportunities into local communities for people to live brings footfall, reduces crime. Those are excellent things. She's heard what my Honourable friend has said in terms of our support for house building, and we stand ready to support her community to make sure they can do it in her town centres.
Shadow Minister David Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The opposition broadly supports the Government's proposals in the Plan for Neighbourhoods, which carries on the excellent work started under the previous Government. But can the Minister tell the House how the proposals to diversify the base of consultees, to prioritise the voice of trade unions, who by definition are found mainly in large public sector and corporate organisations, will not drown out the voice of the small businesses on whom our town centres depend?
I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mr Speaker, to remind the House and the Honourable Gentleman and his colleagues on the front bench that they, of course, wanted the predecessor programme to the Plan for Neighbourhoods, but they didn't provide any money for it. But a slight oversight that we've been able to address to keep the promises they made that they would have had to have broken. On the point of trade union boards, I can understand why colleagues opposite don't want the voices of millions of ordinary people in the room when decisions are made. They never do, they never will. But what I would say is they are not in competition. They are not in competition with small business. Far from it. There's room for both of them in there, and I know both of them would add lots to those discussions.
George Dean.
Number 12, please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're giving local leaders the tools they need to deliver growth to their areas by devolving power and money from central government to local communities. We're investing in programmes which drive growth, and we will set out our refreshed vision for local growth funding at the multi-year spending review.
George Dean.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Local high streets like those in Hertford and Stortford are the beating heart of our communities, and they power economic growth. I welcome that the Government is already working with local authorities to implement high street rental auction powers to breathe life back into high streets and ensure vacant shops are occupied. So would the Minister set out in further detail how this will help to drive up occupancy rates in our high streets and drive growth in Hertford and Stortford?
Minister. I'm grateful for that. I think high street rental auctions are a great tool for Hertford and Stortford and for the rest of the country to take on persistent vacancy. We've already got trailblazers who are moving forward at great pace to implement these, but these powers and the resources, the extra resources we've made available, are available for all councils, so we'd ask them to come forwards to designate those town centres and high streets and to start those auctions.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I was delighted to see recently that Lancashire County Council and Fylde Borough Council have committed more funds to the St Anne's Pier Connect project, but also looking at the island site, which is critical for driving growth within the town centre to get that development off the ground. So what funds or grants are now available from the government for this kind of project for Fylde Council to apply to really catalyse that growth on the island site in St Anne's?
Minister.
Well, we're changing the way in which local growth is done in this country, Mr Speaker, exactly for this reason. Previously, the previous government wanted to submit communities to beauty parades on short-term funding on criteria decided by them. Our funding plans, which will be coming forward at the spending review, will be long-term, will be allocative, and will be based on what his community wants rather than what ministers want.
David Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I agree with the Minister that they have changed the way that growth is happening in local government. Because apart from the massive growth in the numbers of people rough sleeping and the massive growths in piles of rubbish uncollected in Birmingham, there's little evidence of economic growth at a local area. So does the Minister acknowledge that when we compare at Band D equivalents, that Conservative councils consistently charge much lower council tax than Labour or Lib Dem ones? The best way for our constituents to ensure local growth is to vote Conservative at the council elections.
Mr Speaker, I've been here. It's horrible in opposition. I've been here. You get to the point where a couple of hours before orals you get told by someone you have to answer the clip question on council tax. All I'll say to the honourable gentleman is I know that the people of our country are smart enough to decide which of us they'd rather. Thank you.
Jack.
Mr Speaker, with permission, I'll take questions 13 and 20 together. The Government recognise the considerable financial strain that rising service charges are placing on leaseholders. That is why we intend to consult on the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act's provisions on service charges and bring them into force as quickly as possible thereafter. This year, we will also consult on strengthening the regulation of managing agents, including as a minimum introducing mandatory professional qualifications, which set a new basic standard that managing agents will be required to meet.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answer. On Friday, I met with Jackie, Gary and Simon in Fairwater Drive in my Spelthorne constituency. Jackie's service charge is going up from £1,500 a year to £4,800. And I sat down and had a look at the bills, and without any itemisation, it's impossible to know where to start with the property manager. The Minister wrote in response to a written question recently, we will set out our full position on regulation of estate letting managing agents in due course. Can he give some reassurance to Jackie, to Gary and to Simon that their interest will not be put onto the back burner, and suggest when in due course might be?
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I'm sorry to hear about the experience of Jackie, Gary and Simon. As I said, Mr Speaker, the Government is fully committed to protecting leaseholders from abuse and poor service at the hands of unscrupulous managing agents. Despite committing to regulate property agent sector in 2018, the honourable gentleman will know that the previous government failed to do so. This government will act. We're looking again at the recommendations of the 2019 report that was commissioned from the Noble Lord Best and not acted upon by the previous government over many years. And as I've made clear, we intend to consult on the regulation of managing agents this year.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many leaseholders in Southampton Itchen who are still waiting for fire remediation work to be done are now being clobbered by extortionate service charges. In one case, a constituent went from £800 a year to £3,300 a year, with next to no clarity that that money is being spent well. Despite my recent meetings with developers and management companies, I'm yet to be convinced that there is any end in sight for my constituents. So what conversations is government having with management companies who are letting service charges spiral out of control?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I recognise, as I said, the challenges experienced by leaseholders. When it comes to insurance premiums, Mr Speaker, my colleague, the Minister for Building Safety, recently met with the industry to discuss how we can bring premiums down. When it comes to service charges, I can assure my friend, not least because I have significant numbers in my own constituency, that we understand the considerable and in some cases intolerable financial strain being placed on leaseholders as a result of opaque and unaffordable service charges. We are committed to empowering leaseholders to challenge unreasonable service charge increases, and my honourable friend will not have to wait long for us to take action to that end.
David Davis.
Number 14, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Government recognises the impact that spending on special educational needs and disabilities is having on council finances. A £1 billion increase to SEND and alternative provision was announced for 25-26 in the autumn statement. The Government intends to set out plans for reforming the SEND system in further detail this year. This will include details on how the Government will support local authorities to deal with their historic and accruing dedicated schools grant deficits.
I thank the Minister for that. I mean, next March, when the local authorities can no longer exclude the high needs elements from their balance sheets, half of them will go bankrupt as it now stands. In the East Riding, in this year's education budget, it's estimated to be 17 million in deficit. These are largely because of increased high needs spending from pupils with special education needs. Can he give me an undertaking that we will not next year find ourselves either crushing the needs of special needs children or those of other needs in society?
Well, I mean, first of all, we need to actually repair the system of SEND provision and the impact that's having on local authorities. It's not sustainable in its current form, and we have to reform that from the ground up. But equally, the deficits that have been accruing and are still accruing are a big issue. We don't intend at all for council to be the victim of a system that they've had no control over, and we'll work with them into that endeavour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As an SEND parent, my view of my child's needs are holistic and don't just stop at where the responsibilities of a local authority lie. So can the Minister set out what steps he is taking to ensure that our SEND policy reflects the needs and responsibilities of departments such as the Department for Health, the Treasury, local authorities and the Department for Education?
And that's exactly the reason why this needs a whole-of-government approach. When government works in silos, in the end, it's all that needs support most that fall through the gaps. This government works together across departments, including our own and Department for Education and others, to make sure that we have a single plan for addressing some of this. Because in the end, of course, we have to deal with the financial impact on councils, but it's the young people going through the system that really matter.
We come to topicals, Sir Devon.
Number one, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I refer the House to my entry in the member's interest as a trade union member, but I'd like to update the House on the waste dispute in Birmingham. Our priority is tackling the misery and disruption for residents. Government has consistently urged the Council and Unite to sit down and resolve the dispute. I welcome that they met yesterday and that further talks are taking place today, and we continue to press all parties to negotiate an urgent resolution. It is essential to protect public health by tackling the backlog of waste, and my department is in close contact with the Council. This weekend I met with the Council leader and the Managing Director, and we're providing ongoing support to address the public health emergency. Collections took place over the weekend and will continue this week to clear the backlog and protect the public health. This government continues to support Birmingham's recovery.
Sir David Davis.
And needless to say, everybody wishes her well with that, Mr. Speaker. In March, the Chancellor said the regulatory system has become burdensome to the point of choking off innovation, investment and growth. We will free businesses from that stranglehold. But in my constituency, the Finnish company Metsä Tissue want to invest hundreds of millions of pounds to build a state-of-the-art tissue manufacturing plant. The investment will provide 400 direct jobs, thousands of other jobs and 30 million a year to the local economy. Yet, despite being a free port site, the investment is hampered by monumental costs of 113 million to make the site ready. The equivalent site in Sweden will cost £4.5 million. What's the government doing to correct this problem?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've been doing a lot to try and make sure that the government works, that the taxpayers get fair and reasonable amounts so that we invest in to make sure that land is ready for development. As the member mentions, we have got the free ports, some of them the legacy from the previous government, but we want to see infrastructure built. That's why we bring forward the planning and infrastructure bill. We've committed to 150 new major infrastructure projects going forward, so hopefully we will kick-start the economy in a way that his government wasn't able to.
Durham Paffett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was delighted to see civic and business leaders in Southampton recently join the Labour Council in launching their Renaissance vision, setting out an ambitious agenda for regeneration and house building in the city. What steps will government be taking in the upcoming spending review to support and enable house building visions like this?
Well, I don't begrudge my honourable friend from trying, Mr. Speaker. He will have to wait for the spending review outcomes to get answers to those questions.
Kevin Hollingray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The effects of the Birmingham bin strike have been declared a major incident They are a national embarrassment, and with 21-degree temperatures forecast for later this week, will become a public health emergency. With Labour MPs in Birmingham busy campaigning for an airport in Pakistan, and the Secretary of State unwilling to visit the city or take on the Union Unite, is that because of the tens of millions of pounds her party receives from Unite, or indeed the £10,000 she's received for her own election campaign?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thought the Shadow Secretary was beneath that and better than that, but hey-ho. Look, this is a local dispute, and it's right that the negotiations are led locally, Mr. Speaker. We've been clear that both parties should get round the table, and I'm pleased that this happened on Sunday and talks continue today. But they did declare a major incident last week, Mr. Speaker. We expect the rubbish to be cleared, we expect them to get round the negotiating table, and we expect it to be sorted.
Kevin Holleray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. She still doesn't explain why she's not visited the city to look at this firsthand. But in her manifesto, on another topic, in her manifesto, she sets out the issue of preserve the green belt. In this very house, she said she would transform grey belt land such as wasteland or old car parks, but also she would protect green belts. The Office of Budget Responsibility, in their report accompanying the spring statement last week, states that most additional homes delivered, so up to 500,000, according to her world, will be built on green belt. Is it not the case that she has conned the public with her grey belt policy and that she has unintentionally misled this House?
How is it called? Oh, Mr. Speaker, I thought he was going to do better, but he didn't. The minister was in Birmingham on Thursday, and I'm always happy to visit Birmingham. It's a great city, and it's always been a fantastic place, and I've probably been there more times than the honourable member has, actually. And when we come to Greenbelt, Mr. Speaker, it was under the Tories the number of homes approved on Greenbelt land increased nearly tenfold since 2009. So I won't take lectures, but what we have done, Mr. Speaker, is we've said brownfield first. We're taking the action to make sure we deliver those homes that people need, including the infrastructure. He could learn a lot from me.
John Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the end of January, there were 14,000 people still on Northumberland County Council's social housing waiting list. Yet there are hundreds of properties right across the county, including in rural Allendale, that remain empty. With people on the housing list in desperate need of accommodation, it's a disgrace that the Conservative administration has left them empty for so long. Does the Minister agree with me that a Labour council backed by a Labour government will do much more to get people off the housing list and into homes?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Local authorities already have a range of powers to bring empty homes back into use, but I'm more than happy to meet with him to discuss the specific issue in more detail.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month I was in a field by East Bar Estate in Hull with the River Humber in the distance. The field lay submerged underwater and sat clearly below sea level. Residents told me the field acted as a barrier between the homes and water and were really worried that the planned development, which is in the whole local plan, would leave neighbours with damp homes and their homes flooded. Can the Minister reassure me and residents in Hull and other low-lying communities that the Government will ensure the land use framework will determine areas for development, considering flood risk management and the delivery of sustainable drainage systems?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we took action on SUDS in the MPPF. We made very welcome improvements in that area. DEFRA have launched a consultation on a land use framework. Take it the Honourable Lady has submitted her views and will publish the response to that consultation in due course.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I alluded earlier to Bracknell being 76 years old, and one of the challenges we face, especially in our older estates, is insufficient parking. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss how government, the council and social housing providers can work together to address this issue?
I'm grateful for that question. We are determined to drive up standards across the private parking sector, and colleagues in the DfT across the other elements of the parking sector will announce our plans regarding the private parking code of practice in due course, and of course be very happy to meet with them to discuss further.
Wendy Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With rats as big as cats and over 17,000 tonnes of rubbish piled up in the streets of Birmingham and stories of rubbish being set alight in some streets, this is a Birmingham Labour-run problem that needs to be sorted out by the council there and this government. But can the Minister reassure me that neighbouring authorities such as Walsall Borough Council will be reimbursed for any additional costs that we incur as a result of this strike?
But all of us understand how difficult things are in Birmingham, but it's the government's job to support Birmingham to recover and get that service back to normal. Now, there are three strands: regularising the negotiations with the trade union to find a long-term solution, dealing with the routine collections and getting more trucks out the depot, and thirdly, dealing with the clean-up of waste that's been accumulated on the street, and we are supporting the council in doing that. On the question, I'm assuming on mutual aid, any mutual aid that is provided by local authorities will be reimbursed.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With the recent announcement that Goodman have bought Luton's Vauxhall van plant site for redevelopment, does the Minister agree with me that it's local government that has a key role to play in local business and regeneration plans to help drive economic growth?
Yes, so economic growth is the #1 mission of this government, and as I've said, I think multiple times at this dispatch box, that's an inside job, and it takes that great local leadership. That's why we've made the commitment in creating new devolved institutions and backing our existing ones, and in the devolution of power and resources from this place to those communities.
Richard Holden.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. Devolution is also going alongside with revolution in local government in Essex, where we're expected to see numerous unitary authorities created. However, local people are concerned that they won't get a say in the structure of those local authorities. So can the Minister tell me if they will get a say? There's also concern about local elections being delayed by multiple years. So can the Minister also let me know whether or not we are going to see year after year of Basildon Council not being accountable for the decisions it's currently taking?
But, I mean, first of all, I pay tribute to local leaders in Essex and in other places for the leadership that they have shown to make sure that there is sustainable and accountable local government at the end of the devolution and reorganisation process. So he has our absolute commitment that we will work with local leaders through those issues. As for the election question, elections have been postponed for a year. It's our intention that routine elections will take place as planned.
That's been correct.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many of my constituents in Bolton South and Walkden are living in temporary accommodations. They can't get a social house or able to buy any houses either. They have to go into the private rental sector where the rents are sky high. What action is the government taking to stop landlords exploiting this crisis and give my constituents a way out of temporary homes?
This government is tackling the root causes of homelessness by delivering the biggest increase in social and affordable house building in a generation, and that's being backed by £2 billion of investment for social affordable housing. Our Renters' Rights Bill will abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions as well.
Lewis Cocky.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituents in Broxbourne rightly expect new schools and health facilities, in particular GP surgeries, in place before new housing development. What action is the Minister taking to force developers to deliver infrastructure first?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. The government does recognise the importance of ensuring that new housing development is supported by appropriate infrastructure. The revised National Planning Policy Framework we published last year included changes designed to improve the provision and modernisation of various types of public infrastructure. And as the honourable gentleman is well aware, we're also committed to strengthening the existing system of developer contributions to ensure new developments provide the necessary infrastructure that communities like his expect.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've been campaigning for fair renting in Bournemouth and recently held my first Renters' Roundtable at the Bournemouth Food Banks Cafe, attended by my constituent, Alison Thomas, among others. Alison can't cook in her home because water is leaking through her kitchen ceiling and she's scared to turn on any electrical devices. My constituency, our Mubarak family of 6, rent an overcrowded home with black mould so harmful that the head teacher of the 4 children living there have had to write to my office to express concern. Does my honourable friend agree with me that we need urgent action to improve the state of the private rented sector in Bournemouth East?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, for all that he's doing to support private renters in his constituency. And, Mr Speaker, I'm saddened, but I have to say, in all honesty, not shocked by the cases he raises. Those experiences are still far too common in both the social and private rented sectors, and we know in particular the health risk posed by damp and mould. That's one of the reasons we've chosen to sequence the implementation of AWAB's law in the way we have, as it will allow us to apply the protections to damp and mould earlier than would otherwise have been the case.
Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Exmouth and Exeter East, the Lib Dem local council are proposing to build tens of thousands of new homes with little thought of the corresponding infrastructure. Now, when I've spoken to local councillors, they believe that they have no agency in this process and that central government are telling them what to do. So what more can be done to ensure that local government is held accountable for their decisions?
Well, local electors, Mr. Speaker, can hold local authorities accountable for all of the decisions they make. When it comes to infrastructure, I refer him to my previous answer. But local authorities should, as part of the local plan development process, have infrastructure strategies in place which set out the requirements for infrastructure and how they should be funded.
Sean Woodcock.
Speaker, next month marks 80 years since victory in Europe, and I look forward to attending many VE Day events in my constituency to thank our service personnel of yesteryear. However, homelessness is an issue that affects many veterans, and so while I welcome the Prime Minister's pledge to guarantee a roof over the head of every veteran, can the Minister confirm what extra support there is for the veteran community in Banbury with regards to homelessness?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Homelessness veterans in Banbury will be able to benefit from extra support thanks to £371,927 increase in funding for homelessness services in Cherwell and West Oxfordshire in 25-26. Veterans in Banbury can also access housing support through Operation Fortitude. This nationwide system provides housing guidance and assistance to veterans experiencing or at risk of homelessness.
Manira Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, in the London Borough of Richmond, we desperately need more social homes, but we're really short of sites we can build on. I've long been running a campaign for the disused Teddington Police Station to be turned into a GP surgery and social homes, but understandably the Met wants top dollar for this in order to fund services. So will the Secretary of State look at ways to incentivise public bodies to sell assets below market value for community benefit?
The honourable member will forgive me, but I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the case she raises. We are giving serious consideration to how we better utilise public land in general, particularly in areas with constrained land allocations such as her own.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over half of my constituency casework is substandard repairs, poor quality communications from social landlords and damp and mould, and that's why this week I'm launching a new Safe and Healthy Homes campaign in Kensington and Bayswater. Can the Minister outline how the government will work with councils and housing associations ahead of changes in the law and policy frameworks like AWAB's law to improve standards for social tenants, including in my constituency?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. We are working closely with the sector as a whole to talk through how we can best implement reforms such as AWAB's law, the overhaul of the Decent Home Standard that we intend to bring forward. But as I referenced in a previous question, Mr. Speaker, all resident providers of social housing are required to deliver the outcomes of regulatory standards that are set by the independent regulator, and that independent regulator has powers at its disposal to identify when serious failings are taking place.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning, the firefighters in Birmingham have made it plain that they are going to stand in solidarity with the bin strikers in Birmingham, so they're not going to collect the rubbish. We know that there's only 17 workers, which means it's a drop in the ocean financially. Given what this government has said, that they will do all that they can to bring this strike to an end, would the Deputy Prime Minister confirm that they will force the council to make that payment and deploy the army to assist the local charities and organisations that are helping themselves in clearing? They need the extra support.
Well, I mean, he does very well to go from 0 to 100 pretty quickly on that issue. Just stepping back from the immediacy of it, clearly we want all parties to be in the room having the negotiation to do with the underlying pay and terms and conditions dispute that's at play. But to be absolutely clear, where there has to be a red line, that cannot stray into potentially compromising the equal pay settlement that has been agreed, so that all that begins to unravel. Bearing in mind that's already £1 billion of cost to local authority. So we support them and we want people in the room, and it's got to be a sustainable deal that can hold.
Final question, Alice MacDonald.
Mr Speaker, as the Minister will be aware, nutrient neutrality has had a big impact on Norfolk, holding up many homes and planning applications. The launch of the Norfolk Nutrient Mitigation Fund has helped make a difference, but we need more environmental solutions. Can the Minister update on what else we will be doing to address nutrient neutrality so good homes and growth can be unlocked in our local area?
Yeah. Well, Mr Speaker, we are supporting a range of targeted interventions to deal with constraints such as nutrient neutrality, but in the longer term, the measures in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, introducing that Nature Restoration Fund, will allow us to provide that win-win for both development and nature, deal with constraints at nutrient neutrality and unlock the development of new homes.
We'll let the front bench change over.